If I was a colonialist, you would have downloaded the tool program, provided funding for everybody so that David would have had a recruiter funded. The university would be so happy, the program is working so well. And it would be a nice cookie cutter process. Everybody would be so delighted at this very good degree. Because there is no other program, I think, that's been based on what I'm being like. This. Yeah, if I were the colonialist, I would have downloaded the program, provided funding for scholarships for 5 years, funding for staffing for 5 years. It would have been a cookie cutter process, and if you made a mistake, you'd have to come back and report why. There would be evaluations every year. People going around constantly visiting. I come from New Zealand. We were colonized. We escaped Britain as all people. So the foundation of the Matul was that we started in Manila, India, Nairobi, as equals. There was a catalyst for that. Manila, Nairobi, and the Philippines and India said, but we do need a US partner, because everybody wants a US partner. But we want a system. We don't want a partner, we want a system. Partner means you pay and we do what we're told. System means let's work together. So some of the answers to the questions you have are missing. When you asked David, well, can you make changes? What we did not set up formal MOUs, legal documents. We said, let's have a common understanding between us. And so this is a design that I started with based on that research I showed earlier. And then we modified some of that design collectively through this kind of discussion. And then we said, okay, this is our core program for the Matul. But every school, because we're working with theologians, they will want to add theology. So we expect, go with the core. Don't let them know that we expect them to add some theology. When they want to add in 4 or 6 courses, say, okay, you can add 2 courses, and they will be about right. Okay. So we left it flexible in terms of that theological thing. We have kept refining. I think the question before about pastoral, somebody's question about youth and pastoral care, psychological, dealing with the psychological damage that occurs in the context of the slums. It's weak in our program design. Okay. It's weak in our it's weak in our design. And so that is a need. Now, there is an element, David is an expert in reconciliation ministries. So that has been a design course in some places developed. And that does deal with trauma and trauma issues. Mm. So that's one place. How much can you put into a master's course? So we've got 16 courses. In Manila, they've got 54 units. And WCIU we've got 30. So they added all sorts of extra courses. English, how do you write in English? They added that in. So they developed it differently. Here in Nairobi, the accreditors said, you have to have all transformation work and leadership. So it developed differently here. So it's been different. What's common? So professors must be working with themselves, looking over themselves. The pedagogy, which is what I need to get to next, is different. It's action reflection. So that's the first thing, action reflection. This is the most difficult thing, even with you here who believe in it, to help you move as educators from teaching from all that knowledge in your head is extremely different. I look at you, I know you're such experts. Let me do something. It might take a little bit of time. I need to help me. Well, come on, he's a human. Let me see. I need to share this else.
Daniel.
Daniel, yeah.
About this young man.
Come and join us.
One of them.
All right. Now, and somebody else from you're from the Senate. I'll get you to do something. Come on. Yeah. So, Daniel, I just want you to take 1 minute and discard for everybody. What does it count? Just 1 minute. Go on. What does that count? So, what is it? What does it count?
Explain.
You explain.
Oh, explain.
Yes. Explain to him.
Copy something that you speaking.
This will be. Sorry for my accent. Just 1 minute. Right?
Does he know that it's this one?
Can you explain to all of us?
Yes.
Explain to everybody.
Yeah, just publicly.
Okay, so what I know in coffee is very similar to used to put water. You take water to drink. Doesn't.
You have a minute. Anything else you want to say? That's it. Okay, let's thank you. Can you pass me the cup? The cup and
Simon.
Thanks. Thank you. What I want you to do is explain about it.
I've been requested to explain what is a cup.
Yes.
A cup is a vessel that is used to take liquids after. It can either be made of plastic, metallic, or a glass. It's a smaller, the size of the hand. Comfortably be carried by the hand. Yes. It comes in different. This cup, this specific cup. It can be used in a company of sauce. And it comes in different colors and different sizes. Some of them have one handle, others have two handles, double handle. Yes.
Yeah.
How is it different from?
How is a cup different from this? It's cup can be made from different materials. Can have a plastic, can have a metallic, but this is a glass. Just from the name itself, it's a glass. It's just made from glass. The cup is colored.
The question is the question. What is the difference? What's the difference? That's the question between these two.
And this one doesn't have. That is one. This has a cover, and this one doesn't have a cover. This one is this one is decorations. This one is blue, doesn't have decorations. This one has a small drops of the one with the area, one was the phone. And one was shotgun, the other one was a. Yes.
That's a word.
What should we say with this one? Thank you. Now we have 3 cups.
Yeah.
So now we can generalize, right? Okay. Thank you. You got a long way. Thank you. The difference between these 2 presentations from Patrick and his, what is the difference here? Patrick, in his mind, he was trying to think, what is a cup? What is a cup? How do I describe a cup? Right? But here he's looking for something in his hand. How do children learn? So they chew everything, right?
Yes, yeah.
You gotta keep taking things out of their mouth, right? You've been doing this. They're always active. They're going this way and that way. They test. I've got a 1-year-old daughter. She just started walking. Exactly on her birthday.
Granddaughter.
Granddaughter. So this is how children learn, right? We learn from concrete to concentric. So with 3 cups here now, and comparing between this, then you can get a class of cups, right? And different types of cups, right? That's the conceptual, that's Greek philosophy, right? That's what you've been studying at university, right? You know. But you still learn from your action. You still learn by what you're doing in the sun. So for the non-tool at WCIU, the William Carey, and wherever I go, I try to encourage this. Our students have to, with most of the courses, spend 1/3 of their time in the community, working with a community organization with that particular topic. If they're without this course on community economics, then they have to be working with an economic, some organization that's doing some economic engagement. If there was me on movement leadership, we'll just take the advocacy and land justice course. They have to find an organization working on land justice and work with them. They come to class, and one of them is devastated because they've just been in a confrontation with bullies. So they're petrified, and they're weeping at what happened to the people, and the rest of the class are ministering to them. And this is our learning for the day. What does it mean to stand for land justice? So how much teaching did I do that day? Doesn't depend on my brain. It does, in a little way, in that I've got to structure the learning process, and I've got to move from the 1 or 2 experiences to the integrated theory and connect them to the global theory of land justice, right? But that's not the primary piece of the learning experience. I keep saying this to professors and to people like yourselves that are more educated and wiser than I am. It's almost impossible to get a professor to change. Paolo Freire. So this is Piaget's theories in terms of pedagogy, how children learn. And then we're applying it to andragogy, from pedagogy to adult education. Adult education, same principles apply. Paulo Freire, when he worked in the slums of Brazil, so I've lived there, my wife is Brazilian, it's influenced Brazil greatly. He trained people in language learning. And as they're learning words, they have discussion about what the words mean. And they got to certain words about the pain of their poverty. They begin to expand those. The facilitators would expand these to an understanding of oppression, injustice. Who's causing the oppression? How are we acting? This left-wing revolutionary type movements is called conscientization. It's much better in Portuguese, conscientization. Makes no sense. So in English, it's a consciousness of the causes of poverty that comes through reflection on the realities. So this, he says, is the way that we should be educated. But instead, what we do, we act like bankers. Now, if I'm a banker and you come to the bank, Patrick, would you like to be a person trying to get money from the bank? I'm gonna get money, you have to shop. This is what happens when you go to the bank. You forgot your card.
This morning.
Oh, you have.
Yes.
You're coming to get money from the bank.
This my card.
What are you gonna do with that? Machine. And after the machine, as the machine works, the money comes. Okay. So who controls this process? Does he control the process? The bank totally controls the process. Almost every step, except putting in the card. You can get this much, you can't get this much, right? Sometimes the machine's not got enough money, so you can't get the money. Oh, there's so many things. Isn't that how we teach? You come to my class, I go to my syllabus, I will teach you this today, I'll give you an exam tomorrow. I will control what you're learning. This is not adult education. This will not produce the kind of workers we need. So you ask the question, what is it about the now tool? Number one, the students must live. The students that came from America here lived in the slums. So they must live in the slums, or if they're not living, they must do much of their time while they're studying. They've got to be in the slums, about a third of their time. Now, I cannot impose this on the primary schools. So it depends on the program director to make that happen. And then he has to work to train his faculty, to retrain his faculty in these processes of prairie and education. Prairie had a number of other elements of education that are important for our process. So, okay. What else have I not answered here? So we're not a colonial process. It's a collaboration between sister schools, fostering the emergence of a program within particular contexts. Would it be better to be a download from America with money? Well, you guys have got a lot of money here because you've got a good system of collaboration. So maybe not a download, but certainly extend our capacity of collaboration. But that really is better to come from the field, not from the states, but from the field itself. So structuring that requires someone smarter than me to move it forward. What do I get next? What do I need to say? What do I need to answer next from any of those questions? Some of the
You have
questions.
captured them. You have addressed the questions, yeah.
So here's that one question. What's the role of WCI, William Carey International University? Okay. What's the role of a university? So if it's not funding, what is the role? I think everyone wants a partner with the US just because it's got credibility, right? It helps. Even if we're not doing very well. I started with Azusa Pacific University, which is a good university. But as with even here with COVID, the university has contracted 40%. And so I moved across to William Carey International University because it's a mission school. The compatibility with the mindset and the objective of William Carey is to foster programs in other schools, innovative educational programs. So this is a much better fit because at Azusa Pacific, there wasn't a single person on the board. That wasn't, there was one Indian brother, but the rest were all white. They hadn't been missionaries, they hadn't been overseas. It's like, there was nothing really to back me up. Now we've got a multinational faculty. We've got 2 Kenyans on the faculty, including Elton, adjunct faculty. But in the core faculty, we've got Diana Kimani, who will share later today. We have Chinese faculty, 2 Chinese faculty. African American, we can go right around. It's just what we know. We just have fun. We just love each other. It's good. All right. So, it's good. So what's the role of the university? I think William Carey we've got an online program with accreditation, good accreditation. We have a PhD program. We've had a PhD program for 4 years. We now have relaunched it because there were some changes in accreditation. So I'm putting together an urban cluster. I have 2 seats left. If anyone wants to do a PhD in urban, and it's called a development studies degree, so you've got a double whammy here with an urban focus. Do 40 years, it will take 60 years. That's the US standard. Make it make. Nobody needs 60 years for a PhD. So that's ready to go. So if you want to join, and I would think that one of the barriers to moving processes forward is the lack of people with PhDs. So why start at a master's level when we know the grassroots is the key? Because the educational process requires that higher level of thinking. So saying a PhD, to get a master's degree, you got to have PhD people to run it. So we're set up to do that because we're online. Our students that you've met here, right? You've met Patrick from Sierra Leone, you've met Minerva. Ben Victor's been sitting in classes. He's not really a student. I think he's a collaborator, co-educator. You've Ishaya from Nigeria, who's a political leader. We've got these kind of students in the classes. One brother has started 15,000 micro enterprise projects. It's got 15,000 people. That's kind of interesting. So that's WCIU questions. Let me go to question. Yeah.
I appreciate what you are doing about being on the ground, being concrete learning as you are putting it. But I'm wondering, given the spread of the students globally, how do you do monitoring and evaluation as a university?
Yeah, it can be done, and it's actually quite easy. Yeah, it is, because you've got. So let's take the advocacy course. So they have to, first step is they have to, prior to the course, set up a contract with a partnering organization. That takes at least 3 visits. The first visit, they go and talk and everybody gets excited. Second visit, they go back and the organization says, well, maybe you could help us with this and this and this. And the student says, well, what can I learn? And they say, well, we can teach you this and this. And again, it's a good discussion. Third time they go back, they say, well, actually, the director will be in America for the next 6 months. So this won't work. So we asked them to actually go to 3 organizations and then work out a contract with one with their stabilities. They have to report back what research they've done, on what basis, and from a process where both parties agree for those things. And then so every week we're on Zoom for 2 hours. They're feeding back, usually not the whole class, but 2, 3, 4 students each week. So you pick up the vibes very quickly if something's not working, or if something's really going well. if something's not working, then you've already summed it up, but so that's a point of direct engagement with the supervisor on the ground. And a couple of times I've had to take students out from those partnerships because they're just not working. By the end of and then we're writing an analysis of what to do. At the end, we do quite a significant analysis in those classes. And the supervisor is doing an analysis. It's very simple. The supervisors have no time, but they're supposed to learn to comment if something's not right. And they do. If something's not right, they really say it. In which case, again, there's a personal contact. So the best practice is a one-to-one context directly between the professor and the supervisor. That there is this constant reporting and that there is a written documentation. Seems to work pretty well. But we have had some internships that didn't go so well. Yeah. Maybe 2 or 3%. It's not very high. And 2 students that should not be involved in industry. Out of, I guess, for me, about 80 students I've worked with. And we learned that from people on the ground. So the thesis also is in partnership with an organization. So it's going to be community-based. And it can be theological, so that some are theologically inclined. So that's one way to do it. It can be an internal organizational evaluation approach. All of the literature we get is on social science research. Do some studies. They were pushing it, do some focus groups. But we've got business courses. So what about a business plan as research? So what do we do with that? What about setting up schools? So we've got quite a range we have to grapple with in terms of research. So community-based action based, they have to at the end present their thesis to the community. So the community has to respond. And that's interesting. So they have to do it in the language of the community. So they have to go down into oral culture as part of the whole process of the degree. They've got to go down. And they have to go up into Greek thinking, the academic, in terms of the written document, it has to be academically up to standard. That's tough. Yeah. If they're working in a community organization, they might not get to the community itself with their presentation, but to the organizational leadership, who then have to make decisions about what to do with this research. We cannot evaluate on the basis of what decision they made, but we can evaluate on terms of the presentation and the response, the interaction between students. It works. I've got 5 minutes here, I think. I know we're late. 5 minutes. Jesus, and where did we get this curriculum from? We got it from the people. We got it from Jesus. What did he teach? Well, he chose 12 to be with him, right? So first thing is spirituality. And then did he set out to preach? So the second course is evangelism, church planting. We call it building faith communities. Some of our students are Muslims within Muslim communities, within inside movements. So that's the second thing about Jesus. I wish I could present here. I found it. Let me just keep going with Jesus. Jesus, and what did he do? What did the disciples discuss over breakfast? Yeah, I wondered who carried the pots and the pans. Did the women travel or did they handle that or did the disciples pull? Now, what did Matthew, the tax collector, and Simon the Zealot discuss? I think they discussed politics, right? They fought about it. So urban realities. When you do a training, we're training church planting, then at the end I ask you to list the topics and ask the pastors, what do you want to learn next? They will always pick the topic, why are we poor? Why are the slums poor? They will always pick that topic. So social analysis becomes critical in the process. And so laying a foundation, so we have a course of social theories, where we cover 50 different theories, economic theories, social theories, geographical theory, urban geography. How does that affect the slum? The urban geography of Canberra, that is the problem, right? Who owns this land? If you could solve that, you wouldn't need to do all of this hard work, right? Urban geography. So there are theories about how land is managed in cities, right? And then urban theology as part of that. So a lot of theories about poverty. Where do we go next with it? Jesus, then he kept reaching out to the marginalized. So Stephen and Rosemary, both with us, are teaching the course on working with the marginalized, because that's what African Enterprise does. And that's life-changing for the students. Prostitutes, working with prostitutes, it's called sex workers, but working with the elderly, working with the drug addicts. So getting engaged at that level, working with the youth. So different marginalized communities, students pick their internships so they can focus. How many schools have you folks set up here? You don't set up schools, right? No. But in many other cultures, you can set up schools. In fact, the literature that we work from indicates that around the world, government schools do not work in themselves. So in Islam, somebody wants to teach, they set up a private school. Because they got a passion, they recruit some other teachers who have a passion. People in the slums will pay for an education from that kind of school, even if the building is like, CUM used to have the building here, right? They don't mind about the building, they want the education. So by the end of the program, the students know how to do that. Not that they will do it, but they will likely work with an educator. If they're pastoring a church, they'll work with an educator who will do it. So setting up schools. Advocacy, obviously part of what we will do, but particularly for us, land justice is, we'll cover that in the next 2 days. That's central. We do cover advocacy in the marginalized course because working with children is also a piece of advocacy. So these are things Jesus did. Did he set up a school? Perhaps not. No. But this was his passion, advocacy. He was always hanging out with rich people. So helping our students figure it out. In a course on land, on resourcing, well, this is beyond what we originally began with, but Andrea Macalino has developed a beautiful course on where she connects conversations with rich people and our students. That's really cool because the rich people love it. They absolutely love it because they want to deal with real issues. And so the relationships developed in that class have continued on. So I said to Seth the other day that maybe that's something that she could do for pastoral leaders here in Africa as well. The end result in terms of research is not, doesn't come from Jesus. It's just that we have to relate to the academy. So they have to write papers in every course. They have to learn to communicate at a professional level. And they have to do that with graphics, not in the old way of just writing a paper was double spaced. That went out years ago. But most of our universities still do it, right?
Yeah.
But it has to be graphically designed, ready for the web. And they have to be able to present it. And every course they have to be able to present, so they have to become oral presenters of academia. So that's a little bit of the pedagogy, a little bit of the structure of the degree. Most of the universities, it's 12 courses, 3 units each, which is 36 units. It varies between 30 to 54, depending on the country. In the US, a unit is 45 hours of work. Some countries, it's 30 hours. So it varies according to that. Any questions on that, or you want to mention?
Yes, one question. Okay, this is not a question, maybe some, now that you've been an institution for more than several decades, in different parts of the world. From the past research papers of the students, is there something that you can suggest or say that the situation in the informal sector in different parts of the country, of the world, Brazil, Kenya, India, that the challenges are relatively the same? Maybe not exactly, but generally.
Totally. Totally. It's so it's called the culture of poverty. There's not really a culture, this culture is transitive generation. It's an in-between culture. But it is across the board. Because how do you determine something's a culture? Because the people say it's a culture. So my people in Manila, when I took them out for an event with my middle class church I've going to plant before, they really didn't work because many factors. One, they didn't speak English. Second, they went to have a swimming pool. They didn't have swimming trunks. It was a catastrophe. So when I put my friend to the other church in Manila, in the salon, said, "Can we go together?" And then they just had a party. They self-identified as a culture in terms of living poverty. And so the correlation between cities is very, very strong. Now, the level of poverty, if you looked at the Indian slums compared with here, you're very middle class slum. People live in informal settlement. Every country has some way to avoid the word poverty or slum. Sorry, I've used the word poverty. So yes, that's true. In that sense, this is my word. That level. Other cultural differences, yes. The informal sector that Alvin works with, how money rotates in the informal sector versus the formal sector. Again, it's generalized across the globe. So I think it is a global phenomenon. Okay, we've got more time this afternoon till 3. We have some more presentations. And I'll go back. And then tomorrow morning, we'll try and integrate both from yesterday and then more from today, so we can cover other aspects. And then I think with those of you, okay, let me just end with this, the commitment piece in here. There's some of you are educators, program directors, or not program directors, teams or whatever. I would love to have you as part of our commission. I put up there that learn.material.org, that course. To come with the commission, I think that's a prerequisite to go through basically what are we about. I just think we need to get to a point where we've got enough capacity to move it forward. I had a brother in India I was hoping would take over my role several years ago. But there's a spiritual warfare. He was taken out in a motorcycle accident. I don't need to hang on to my rule. And I don't think you need a white face leading a global partnership. So I think to get to that next phase where we've got a wider, pulling together, moving it forward, getting the resourcing that's needed, making it functional. My role is prophetic. Somebody needs to then look at it. All right, so talk to me about that and want to be part and let's work together on that. Let's go and have lunch. But folk online, I'm not sure who's still there. So, please feel free to go. I can do it.
Yes, okay.
Yes. Just if they have any, yeah. How long are we breaking? Let them know.
Yeah,
So
we're coming back up.
Current rules online. I don't know if you're still there on the current. I think maybe they've gone.
He left here.
Yeah.
1:30.
Current was really just might come back, with the clock system, we're gonna help touch with us. So she was really the thinker behind much of this. So she's been sitting there very quiet. You know. So just wanted to introduce her, which not there. So then she could.
You quick for that?
Yes, we are breaking for 45 minutes. Part of it has been eaten, but we'll adjust. So by 2:45, I mean 1:45, we will be back. We're supposed to be back at 1:30, but we took some time before the real time is breaking. So my sister here will pray for our lunch.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you, Lord, for the wonderful session that we've had. And now, Lord, even as we break for lunch, we ask you to bless it and sanctify it so that it will be useful for our bodies. It's in Jesus' name we pray and believe.
Okay, it runs down. Runs down. Then we'll see what happens. Yeah.
Yeah, if you haven't heard of the matul or done the matul, it's good to understand this because the transformational conversation is actually the basis of a whole lot of stuff that goes on inside the matul. So, it starts with an incarnational lifestyle and solidarity with the urban poor as a foundation of theological understanding. And this is where most of the students, we all come in from different backgrounds. I'm working with the poor, transitioning into working with the urban poor, and the other students, many of them are working directly with the urban poor. So that's our starting point, and we believe that living incarnationally is super important to living like Jesus and getting the job done. So the transformational conversation process begins when people join the course. We engage in our local community, our local urban poor community, or whatever community we're involved with, and we go through this process of having a contextual theological conversation. How does that impact with the city? And we end up coming up with new ways of engaging and new theological and new missiological understandings of how to do our job well and what the Lord would have us do. And this has been an enlightening process for me, as I'll explain a bit later. So how does it work? Well, the transformational conversation model underlies the whole course. So it's designed to take the student on a pilgrimage to becoming a whole lot better at what they do in engaging the urban poor than when they started, and coming out with new outcomes. And that's certainly what happened for me. So there's this urban poor locus right throughout the program, and my third slide has the third point covered. and I can't see it. Oh, it's covered by the. Oh, here it is. Hold on. It's field based. So primarily, we're working on an online environment. We all of us in the class are field based. We're not doing it, to get a degree in a classroom. If it's run outside of the US, I believe it's in various places. It's run in local language, and there's this lovely dialogical supportive environment where we have excellent interaction with our lecturers, our professors, and among our students as well. So I've made friends with people from as far away as Ghana and Nigeria, also in India, people that I've gone through from the beginning, even someone in the US who's going to be working in Ethiopia. Anyway, this process of meeting and engaging others and the theological and missiological process, studying community development, brings us to a place of greater effectiveness on the field. So why use this transformational process? Well, the transformational conversation processes empower students to follow God's call in their lives, causing them to build an intellectual structure for their work for Him. And this is exactly what has happened to me. So I used this process quite intentionally in the writing of my thesis. My thesis was entitled On Discerning Female Apostles. I was looking to see how would that work. Anyway, if you look at my process here, I've the entrance conversation is, well, I found all these crazy people who call themselves apostles. I did some worthy experiments myself. I worked through the theology and then the missiology. I did some in my experimenting, and I came up with a way, I believe, to discern apostles and even train them. So these days, I am calling people budding apostles after 6 months of training, and within a year, they're usually self-funded and they are in a pioneering situation. So how did it work for me? Well, I joined the Muttle because I wanted to understand the kingdom of God. And that's exactly what I got out of the course. I got to see beyond my Methodist / Assemblies of God pietistic Christianity of preaching the gospel and establishing a CPM to seeing CPM is just the beginning. And on top of my CPM, there needs to be social movements that will bring the total transformation needed in a society. But I know that my task is early on, and that is the foundation layer, and that is I'm to raise up apostles, prophets, and evangelists for that task, and put in then the DNA to be able to bring total transformation in the future. So that's my 7 minutes. Were there any comments or questions?
Any question for him or everybody should first present and they
I just want to know what the challenges are in almost a majority Muslim context in terms of the gospel and establishing the kingdom of God as the first tenet.
Could I hear the question again, please? I'm sorry, the sound is quite muffled.
Sorry. Thank you so much for the presentation. I was wondering about any challenges you might mention in a majority Muslim context. Realize that many of your pictures, the women have hijabs on, so I assume that is the context within which you have established the full program.
Yeah. So we work with a Muslim majority in a Muslim majority island with Indonesia. It's like 97, 98% Muslim. They're quite fanatical. The challenges, they are many. We have, for a long time, have been working, taking a very pietistic approach, and that we were just walking through villages, meeting people, sharing the gospel, displaying the power of God through signs and wonders, and beginning DBS Bible studies with people that we would expect will lead to churches. Over the last several years, I've got people with community development backgrounds, and they are now working on an anti-child marriage project in our local culture. It's very common for teenagers to marry. It's not so much the problem of old men trying to marry young girls. It's usually just teenagers running off and marrying so they can have sex legally. Anyway, so this team, they are doing this community development project by day, working with youth, winning the support of the community, and because of that support, their Bible studies in that community are ignored. And this is the payoff, I think. There's also been significant power displays by the Lord in this village. So, the constant supply of signs and wonders, because these people are folk Muslims, they have a Muslim faith, an animist heart. The signs and wonders keep, I think, people satisfied and maybe even a little frightened to intervene at this stage.
Jack, thank you so much.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, so Jack is my mentor. He doesn't like me saying that, but I must say. So again, I'm Patrick Freeman from Freetown, Sierra Leone. I just want to start by asking a question. How many of you have ever applied to a college for a program, and after you've applied, you want to do this course, and all of a sudden the university team, they just write you, talk to you. I think we've gone through your resume, we discovered that there's another program that will fit you. You know, if you have got that experience. So in my own case, I applied for a master's in development studies program, and I was so excited about it. Then at some point, I think it was Dr. Diana that talked to me. He said, we would like you to enroll the program. After having gone through your documents, we realized that this is your area. So I was like, what is Matula? It's so strange to me, because it's the first time for me. Perhaps I'm the first person from my country, Sierra Leone, to go through this program. So I wasn't ready for that. But you know what happened? Just a few days before the program, Dr. Vic talked to me. And when Dr. Vic was talking with me, I realized that the exact thing that I was searching for, what Dr. Vic was talking to me about. Then I thought about it. I don't know whether Dr. Vic prayed about it. But one thing I can tell you is that if Dr. Vic prays for you, God will answer. When I was doing my course, Dr. Vic prayed as I get married. And I got married just before I got So if you want that same thing, just come to the master. Dr. Vic will pray for you. Anyway, just kidding. But one thing I can tell you about the matric program is a life-changing program for me, transformative, something that has brought a positive change in my life, in my whole very life. The thing about it is about you first. Do first, then teach. That's what I realized. So through the matric program, I've got a bit of understanding of what is the root cause of poverty and the effective strategies to work with the poor. You know, to work in a slum community is something that is very difficult and challenging. Sometimes when I go down to the bay, to the slum, I will ask myself, what am I doing here? Because you sometimes walk and you're not seeing changes. Like the same thing will happen over and over. Along the way, whilst doing my course, I began to realize some different changes. To be honest with you, at the beginning, I was not quite sure what was happening until when they introduced to us Dr. Diana. No, sorry, not Dr. Diana, Dr. Rosemary, when she came to teach the course in education. And also Alvin, when they changed it, then I realized that I was not doing something foreign or something within my reach. So the marketing course is something that will impact your life and also help you with what you are doing. And we talk about this diversity in curriculum. I love the different aspects of it because it was during that time that I also discovered some other skills, some other aspects, some other important things that to implement down in the day. One course that I would like to attest about is the course on entrepreneurship that I did with Dr. Alvin. When he introduced that course to us, we are just thinking about having something for our youth, those who are not going to school, those who are not working to do. So it was something good for me, and by then we just started the tailoring program. So it opened my eye, and when I did my thesis, I wrote quite a lot about that one, and I'm sure it's going to help our community to bring changes down there. I firmly believe that well. So there are a lot of things about the MATRU program, this collaboration, partnership with different organizations, and also the practical aspect about it. It's not just about head knowledge to go and learn the theory in class, but it gives you the opportunity to put into practice. It's learning and doing, put into practice what you are learning. If I will go to the next slide, maybe take me to the next slide, the third slide. We talk about this localized curriculum, the experimental learning part of it, and also the adaptable approach. That is to say, to be pragmatic. I love that aspect of it. I don't know whether I'm using a very big word here, but it's like, what is happening here in your own situation? We have different situations. What applies in my community might not be the same in somebody's community. So it gives me that insight to see how we can approach things and do it in a way to meet the specific needs that are there for us to meet. I love the collaborative engagement, having time to engage actively in group discussions. That's one thing that I love about the matric program. And it was during the group discussions I got to know more about what others are doing, those in Cameroon, those in Kenya, other parts of the world. So it gives me the opportunity to solve problems, to bring solutions, and to work in a team. And also this community partnership, working with organizations. During my practicum, I had the opportunity to go down to the Bay to do my practical work there. And I had the opportunity to get to know what they are doing. And also the shared leadership is about leading and giving the opportunity to others, for others to lead so that they themselves can discover their potentials. So these are some of the things I would like to share with you quickly, and also this self-awareness. You take me to the next slide. Self-awareness, continuous learning. When I'm seeing us here, I am just thinking like this. I wish the math students would have got the opportunity to come over, because to me it sounds as if I'm still in school. I'm learning something new from you people, It gives you this opportunity to keep on learning, continue to learn, and continue to grow in what you are doing, to gain different experience. So I'm so grateful for being here, and also this transformative insights. Like I said earlier, it is really hard and complex to work with people in the slum, but having gone through the matric program, I've seen life from a different angle. And I have different perception now. I've come to the point to understand why are people doing things the way they are doing them, instead of me starting to complain. At first, my first plan was, let us go and demolish this law. These people shouldn't live because they are suffering. I don't want to see the people in that situation. But I've come to realize when we are coming, I think it was the first day, Simon Peter just showed me, we are coming down and said, this is the slum. And I asked him, how many people are living here? I think he said about 700,000 people. I was like, what? We're just having about 10, 15, 20,000 people. You know what I'm talking? So for me, it's quite inspiring. When I go back to work, I think I will go and tell them down there that there's something good happening here. If I will come to conclusion, I don't want to take more time, take me to the second to the last slide. If I will come to conclusion, take me to the other slide, please. Jump this one because of time. Yes, I just want to do because of time. Okay, this one. So what I'm saying is that the whole aspect of the master program, we have this holistic approach, talk about context yesterday, Simon Peter talked about that quite a lot yesterday, how we can look at this specifically and tailor it into our own situation. And this aspect of participatory learning, collaboration, shared leadership with others. I talked about that earlier. And also the time to reflect this continuous learning, mentoring, coaching, like I said, Jack is my mentor, many of us is my mentor. So it continues like that, and community engagement, which for me is the biggest thing. We come and engage with the entire community to bring transformation. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
From Freetown.
Well, things are not great.
Can I ask you a question?
Questions, yes.
Yeah, in your own context, in what was it, Freetown?
Freetown.
How do you measure that transformation has taken place in your context?
Okay, so for the first time in our history, we are having about 20 students in the university. I don't know whether you've heard about this for dropouts. Something drop out, something new here. When they will stop halfway, they will never find their way to the university. And for the first time, we have got about, I think 2 of them now graduated from the university. So we are seeing that transformation. And one thing that I would say is that most of the youth are taking the lead. Some of the things that we were doing before, we just sit at the back, and they have now got the opportunity to lead us. So that's another aspect of transformation. Does that help?
Yeah, I just have another question about, I've seen one of the things that the community engagement of the last slide. So I'm just asking on your collaborative practices or partnerships, who are your collaborators? Are they more local? Are they those who have gone through your program, or are they outsiders who have collaborated with you in the, the classical sense? And how is that working for you in terms of the collaborations?
Okay, so we have an organization. They are operating locally, but they are not. They came from different parts of the world. So we have Umleon. Umleon, the work they are doing is they are building houses for people living down the slum, at the outskirts of Freetown. So they try to see those families that are in need, to see how they can give them the opportunity to have houses on their own. And as I'm speaking to you now, I think they have got over 50 of them from the slum, from different slums. They have they are taking them there and they have started their life new, with their families rather, and I'm sure they are experiencing something new. So Home Leon is one ministry that we are partnering with. I don't know whether you heard of there's another ministry coming. Maybe I will remember as time goes on. Okay, but we are also partnering with them. Of course, we have World Vision, although we are not having close relationship with them now, but we are also learning from them from what they are doing. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Let me try and integrate these two presentations. Because the topic is actually the concept of transformational conversations, which you know as the pastoral cycle. Right? Is that West Africa Anglicans pastoral cycle?
Yeah.
But when I looked at the pastoral cycle, which is derived also from liberation theology, actually, this progression. Over the years, I thought, I think there's some other dynamics here. I didn't develop the transformational conversations approach for that reason. I developed it previously. So I can share this. How do you know? Let me frame what Jack was trying to share and Patrick was trying to share here. You're involved in ministry. Let me ask you, what was the event in your life where you encountered something here in this slum or elsewhere, and you said, "This is what my life is going to deal with. This is what I'm going to do in my life. I'm going to engage this kind of issue." Youth ministry. What is it? When we encounter the pain, that's the beginning of spirituality, because the pain leads us to the cross. Pain leads us to the cross, and then secondly, when we encounter pain, it leads us to theology, because our mind gets scrambled. Right? We've got to figure this out. So, Big Patrick and Jack are presenting entrance stories first, in terms of where they've come from and what they're doing. And then the next step is we try and find solutions, right? And my mind goes in two directions. One is practical solutions. So we begin to engage in what we call the city conversation. And it might be a conversation about prostitution in the slums. It might be a conversation about, should we be involved in riots? Should we be sitting here or be downtown today? Right? I'm sure you're thinking about this today. So that's our beginning point. And then there's a conversation we begin to engage with. And we look at the literature on that conversation. So is riots the right approach to deal with political issues, political aggression? That's a question you've got to engage with. You should have engaged with it before you get to the riots, right? So that creates your framework intellectually in one area, but again, you go to the Bible. So then you have a biblical conversation, but in the Bible, political riots were not really a theme in the Bible, right? There are different aspects of the politics that apply to the situation. So when you read the Bible, it doesn't make sense until you begin to read some theologians who grapple with political theology. So that's the theological conversation. So you've got these two conversations going on. You've got your activism going on in the community. And these three are feeding together into the central conversation, which is the transformational conversation. Your objective is to resolve that tension in your mind. And as you begin to do so, you formulate then your next action steps. So you started with action, entrance into the community. But you end with a theology, which is an action-based theology. So you end with practical outworkings as the next steps. So you then go through another cycle and another cycle. And your next steps will tend to be collective. So usually this kind of theology results in collective action in the directionality that you've been exploring. That's your leadership dynamic within your theological degree. So now to your question earlier about theology and the research dynamics. Really Jack's presentation there, which I've lost Jack, I was hoping you're still there. Really Jack's theology began because he's got a whole lot of women apostles. And we've written about women apostles. How do you become a woman apostle? What's different? Are they different? Are they the same? His wife is an apostle. So, very interesting study based on something he couldn't figure out. Right? And did he figure it out in the end? He did some brilliant work, a lot of different issues, but no clear sort of conclusion, but it was good research. Right? And I think Patrick's expressing something that's the same in terms of the process. So the conversation, so let me go one step further. School of Dreams and Kibera Studies. One of our graduates, I don't know, 10 years ago, she noticed an American young lady living here in Kibera. She noticed that the girls weren't going to school, high school. She wondered why. So one day she was at the school and she noticed the latrines. Have you seen the latrines? The sludge on the floor was pretty thick. There were no walls. She's a woman of justice. And something in her just like, this is not right. So then I said, well, you want to do a thesis? What's your biblical basis for this? So she didn't really, at that point, she actually was rejecting the scriptures. But she began to think of them. She thought, well, it's justice. The Bible says you've got to do justice. Okay, that's as good as that all. Well, what about dignity? So she began to think about that. So she framed her thesis around certain themes. And she did that well. Most students struggle with that, actually. Because all the research literature is about social sciences, not about theological application, not about contextual theological process. So she did that. So that's so here she is. She's engaging. She meets Jane Wirrer, works with her organization. I forget the name. Starts with an A. Akiba. So she's working on her internship for her thesis with Akiba. Community-based research serving Akiba. So they say, look, why don't you do research and let's see what we can do with it. He studies all of the retreats, or several of the retreats here, puts it all together. At the end of it says this is how it can be solved. And she got a background in fundraising. So as part of the research, she has to do an application because theology that's not resulting in action is not theology. So you can't complete a thesis without action outcomes, right? It's community-based. She takes it back to the leadership. They took her proposal, they sent it to Japan. Guess what happened? She raised $1.2 million for latrines here in So this is transformational conversations as a research paradigm, but also as a paradigm underlying many of the courses in community. So we're not really, it sounds like we're trying to sell something here. We're not really trying to sell something. I'm trying to lay out as a tool of commission. These are some of our underlying principles, processes, pedagogical principles. You want to frame it, go back to constructivist educational theories. So an educational field, learning that involves engagement with the objective of social change. That's the constructivism approach, or deconstructivism. And so some of the theorists, John Dewey, from Piaget, the deconstructivism, that's the priest. And Fleury is in this tradition as well, with his conscious disaster. And then Vygotsky, a Russian educationist. So these are, if you're looking, some of you are still working on doctorates and so on. These are areas of pedagogy that frame what we're doing. And then a specific transformational conversation has become our approach. But some of our students use the master cycle. So then, well, do you have questions on that, or further questions that have Patrick's work is related to that?
Sorry.
Yeah.
So Paulo Freire, Vygotsky, they all have a Marxist approach. Has there been any kind of resistance between our theology, their theology, and Marxism at any level whatsoever in terms of resistance from our people embracing what Paulo Freire might say?
Because I know we're not embracing that aspect. And even Paulo Freire, well, in his early, it goes back to Frantz Fanon. So he read Frantz Fanon when he was younger, and that framed some of his thinking. But actually, he was a very kindly, loving kind of Catholic guy, whose genuine desire was to bring about peace. So as he moved forward, this very bitter part of Marxism and of leftist thinking, which involves this idea of conscientisation, which comes in from further back, before it moved into the museum framework. It ameliorated because of the humanist really. So it really was more of a Catholic humanization that he ended up moving towards. For myself, I basically diffuse it because I've lived under Marxism in Calcutta. When I was in the slums on Manila, the priest where I lived would disappear. So the people who I saw in question, is he a Marxist or is he CIA? So eventually I concluded, no, I just came to preach the gospel. But my answer is I'm Franciscan. And St. Francis' objective when there was division, he's called St. Francis of Assisi because he brought unity between the rich and the poor in his city. So I see that as so I explain to people, I'm engaged in social activism, probably be down there today if I was keen. But we don't have constantly being to make against God. Because Marxism accelerates the violence, accelerates the angst, accelerates the bitterness. So I've lost friends in the Philippines. They go. I don't think that's necessarily right. So just by stating that, it's a framework that sort of diffuses that with my peers. And until you say we've debated this all over the place. We have different opinions on these issues. And I think that's very healthy and effective. So I said enough of that. No. So I'm trying to integrate with the Martul Commission some of the pedagogical processes that we've worked on that are collective. There's a common understanding documents, which is the structural processes. that we said we try and work collectively on these. There's certain freedoms. And then there's a bunch of relationships that we just keep encouraging each other. So that's where we're at. I think we need to sit sometime tomorrow as a commission, and perhaps some of you want to be with us. And just take a session and look at some decisions we need to be making. In a smaller group. Some time for that.
A question. Looking at both John Dewey and Jean Piaget,
Yeah.
look at the pragmatic part of pedagogy. So I'm wondering, like John Dewey wants to, before you decide the kind of learning process or education, you need to determine the transformation you want to bring in that specific society before you now design your curriculum or something like that towards that. Is there that aspect of that kind of aspect in your approach? Yeah.
What do you think? I think it was very strong, isn't it? Is that a defect? Is that a defect in the approach? Maybe, because some of my students came overseas and lived in slums for 2 years, did 6 internships, learned a language, wrote a thesis note, and then went back to the US and couldn't really find their way back in. So I prepared them for a particular lifestyle of working on the poor, which is mine, but was that really what God wanted for them? No, they go for a job interview, and when they look at their paper, and what's this degree you did? When they describe the degree, they get given a job on the staff. So they've got all sorts of amazing jobs. They're making twice the salary they get. But are they really, fulfilling what we set out as a degree? Was the degree too narrowly defined in terms of incarnation or transformation of the other poor? Or do we lay a foundation so they can take all these nonprofits they're working for, some are in business, so on, and actually bring about justice for the American society? Well, those are questions I've got. So there's a lot of flexibility because each course is going in a different direction in terms of its focus. So they're learning at a master's level, you're opening doors for various directions. What I've found is my entrance interview, and I ask them, what do you want to learn in this degree? They say, this is what I'm going to do. And then as I talk with them as they finish, we an interview, we just talk. They're still on the same track. So that's really interesting. They don't seem to move in different directions. So they find the degree serves their purposes, not necessarily my purpose. I think we're so good enough person. Nancy does the PowerPoint there fit with this discussion. I don't think it does. Which case, we're good for the day. You want to drive back through the line?
Thank you so very much. Yeah.
Thank you. For your presence, we started this morning with a question. And, we had a question of who is my neighbor? And in all that people presented, neighborhood has been identified and what to do for the neighbor. Give to us through the introduction, how Mato began his experience, and what they did together with colleagues to come up with what is now gathering us together. And he did mention theology is not studied, theology is done, practical. from practical experience, that when something that makes you go out to do something for the people of God. We moved on to several areas, and we have people present from the different centers, and we have from Ghana, have from Manila, from Manila, what people are doing to uplift the standards of the people. And also the structure of the pedagogy and what people are thinking through. Several questions are asked. So as we continue to digest what we have had for today, let us come early tomorrow. We have to go home early because we never know. The city is full of tear gas. From the city, it can extend to the suburbs. So thank you very much. For today, we shall go for, you're just eating. I don't know whether people should take now what all people will go.
Great. And then we can go for the tea, and then within 10 minutes, those who need to go to.
Okay.
Please let them know the agenda.
Yeah, those of you online, we are closing here for today. I will be meeting again tomorrow,
8 a.m.
starting at 8.
East African.
So East African time, if in West Africa, that will be about 1 a.m. in 6 a.m. Yeah, and then other parts of people. If in Southern Africa, it will be 7. So let me ask my brother here to give us the closing prayer and then we can.
Thank you. Lord, we're grateful to you for the way how you began with us until now. What we have learned, what we continue to grow with, the ideas that you're planting in our heads, in our hearts, and the things that we still need to consider, even as your spirit draws our spirits and our minds to work in various communities. So as we build this community, we ask that the Spirit will continue to help us do what you want us to do. So may your Spirit within all of this unity continue to enlarge our hearts, burden our minds, deepen our understanding, bless our memories. So as we live now, we ask that you watch over each one of us, knowing that the situation might be not very calm or very good. And protect and cover each of us, still get against
And for the team, we say thank you. Yes, it was in Jesus' name.
Okay. So